that the Trump administration has ended the temporary protection status for Somalis.
President Trump is following through on a promise that he made late last year to end deportation protection for some Somali immigrants in the country.
More than 50,000 cargo vessels move through international waters every single day, many of them protected by armed maritime security teams operating under fully authorized contracts. These escort systems secure billions of dollars in global trade and control thousands of routes across some of the most dangerous waters in the world. But investigators now say a small number of those routes may have been operating under a different kind of control. Over the past 18 months, financial audits tied to private security operations have flagged more than $870 million in unexplained activity moving through layered contracts. What began as a routine compliance review has now expanded into a multi-agency investigation involving escort fleets, shipping corridors, and coordinated movement at sea. And earlier this morning, that investigation led federal agents to a single vessel operating just outside a monitored route. At 2:42 a.m., the Atlantic shipping corridor was still operating under normal conditions, with cargo vessels holding their routes and escort ships maintaining position across the lane. But just beyond the main traffic line, one vessel had already been isolated. Several miles away, more than 140 federal agents working alongside naval enforcement units had taken positions across multiple coordinates, forming a containment perimeter around a single target moving just outside the monitored route. Surveillance drones tracked its movement from above, while satellite systems monitored every shift in real time. The vessel itself was registered as a private maritime security escort, fully authorized, fully documented, and operating under a valid contract. On paper, nothing was wrong. But investigators had already identified a problem. Some of these operations had been traced back to a single individual operating inside the system with access to routes, contracts, and movement patterns that raised serious concerns. At that point, investigators did not yet have a confirmed identity. But they knew one thing: this was not random. Moments later, what they found on that vessel would confirm it. Federal Command made its decision. This was no longer a monitored vessel. This was a target. The investigation did not begin at sea. It began with a small anomaly that initially appeared insignificant. A cargo vessel under escort briefly drifted from its assigned route, then returned before any alert was triggered. Within 48 hours, analysts identified 6 similar deviations, each lasting between 7 and 11 minutes, each occurring under escort protection and each returning without explanation. Within 3 weeks, that number increased to 17. By the end of the second month, 41 route deviations had been flagged across 3 separate shipping corridors. Each followed the same pattern: short movement, no alert, and immediate return. Individually, they appeared meaningless. Taken together, they suggested coordination. At that point, investigators began asking a critical question: if this was an error, why was it happening with such precision? As the analysis expanded, additional data linked these route deviations with financial activity across multiple jurisdictions. More than 64 protected routes were now connected through the same movement pattern, each tied to escort assignments from a single network. Financial records showed over $42 million moving through just 4 vessels within 60 days, with transaction clusters appearing within hours of recorded route deviations. When analysts reconstructed the structure, they identified more than 1,200 transactions, each deliberately kept below federal reporting thresholds. At that point, investigators concluded this was no longer coincidence, it was coordination. And as they looked deeper, the situation became increasingly serious. This was not random financial activity, it was a system in motion. At the center of that system was a Somali maritime security director, with control over multiple escort assignments across international routes. At 3:18 a.m., boarding teams moved in. The operation was silent, controlled, and executed with precision, securing the outer deck within seconds. Initial scans showed no resistance. Crew count matched official records at 14. Systems appeared normal. But within minutes, that assessment changed. Thermal scans detected additional heat signatures below deck, exceeding the expected count by at least 9. Agents moved toward a sealed compartment hidden behind reinforced panels, an area not listed in any structural documentation. When access was forced, the internal layout no longer matched the vessel's design. At that point, it became clear the ship was not what it claimed to be. Compartments had been added, systems had been rerouted, and hidden spaces had been constructed. Further analysis revealed dual communication channels, one aligned with official escort coordination, and another transmitting encrypted routing data. Logs recovered from that system showed at least 23 undocumented transfer events over a 4-month period, each aligned with previously identified route deviations. This was not an isolated case. It was part of a larger network. By early morning, the operation expanded beyond the initial target. Data recovered on board linked the vessel to at least 7 additional escort ships operating across multiple routes. Within hours, federal teams identified 11 vessels directly connected to the same system. More than 64 protected routes had been used for coordinated movement. Financial tracking confirmed over $870 million moving through layered contracts, shell entities, and logistics payments. Across the network, investigators identified more than 180 individuals connected to movement records, with multiple recoveries made during active operations. For the first time, the system had been disrupted at scale. By sunrise, the vessels had been secured, the routes had been flagged, and the financial system had been frozen. But the most important discovery was not the number of ships, the amount of money, or even the scale of the network. It was how the system worked. Every movement occurred within approved routes, authorized contracts, and monitored operations. The system did not fail, it was used. And that is what makes this case significant. Because the real threat is not always what breaks the rules, but what learns how to operate inside them. The lesson is clear. Oversight is not only about watching what is outside the system, but understanding what can happen within it. And if that is true, then the real question is, how many other systems are operating the same way right now?